So if you clicked on this episode, I'm guessing that currently your head is feeling really loud, really chaotic, like you can't switch off, like your thoughts just keep going round and round and round on a loop, and it's probably becoming really frustrating. Maybe you've been spiraling about something, maybe you've been replaying a conversation, or maybe you've been trying to anticipate what might happen in a future scenario or situation. So, we're going to talk a little bit about overthinking, why it happens, and some things that you can do in the moment when you notice that your thoughts are spiraling. So, if that sounds like something that you need, keep listening to this episode or keep watching on YouTube, whatever platform that you're on, and let's talk about overthinking. Hi, and welcome back to the Anxiously Capable podcast. This is a podcast where we talk all about anxiety, OCD, and mental health. I'm your host, I'm Jess. I'm a therapist based in the UK, and I specialise in working with anxiety and OCD. And basically, what we're doing here, what the aim of this podcast is to help you live a really fulfilling life, even with anxiety and OCD, because it is possible. You can live a really good life, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. Overthinking is really tough, and when our head starts spiraling, it's really difficult to not get caught up in these thoughts. So that's what we're going to talk about today. This episode is not going to be about fixing the overthinking. It's going to be about giving you space, giving you some tools that can help in the moment, and learning how to take the intensity out of this overthinking. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to solve these thoughts. You don't have to fix the overthinking. I know your brain is telling you otherwise, and that's okay. So, with that, let's talk a little bit about why overthinking happens in the first place. Overthinking is in our biology. It's literally part of our nature. If we go right back to like caveman times, we had to be on high alert. Our ancestors had to be on high alert so that they could anticipate danger, they could know what was going to happen, they could predict dangerous situations, because a lot of the time, the things that they would overthink or have to think about or worry about or have anxiety around were literally life or death situations. They needed to constantly assess potential danger, and overthinking helped them stay prepared. It helped them anticipate that danger. It helped them prepare for those situations. However, we still carry this survival instinct. Our brains have not really evolved beyond that point. So we still have this really strong survival instinct, this need to overthink, this powerful anxiety. But instead of being alerted to a predator or a potential danger or a life or death situation, this now latches onto everyday tasks, everyday situations. I'm talking things like work, finances, relationships, anything that could have some sense of worry or anxiety in it. And even though overthinking was necessary historically, nowadays it doesn't quite fit into our modern world. It actually creates more distress for us. But because we are wired to think this way, it's part of our biology, it's very hard to stop that overthinking. So when you're overthinking, like right now, if you are, it's not because there's anything wrong with you. It's not because you're doing anything wrong. Your brain is just simply doing what it's been taught to do, what it's been wired to do, what has protected us historically. It's keeping you alert, it's keeping you prepared, because that has been what allowed us to survive in the past. But our world has changed, and overthinking doesn't fit in the way that it used to. It causes more distress, it causes more harm in the long run, and it's not serving us anymore. And that can be a really powerful thing to know and to understand, that historically this has helped us, it has protected us, it just isn't serving us at the moment in the same way. It's not doing the job that we need it to anymore. We're not in life or death situations. Even if your body still feels like it is and is still reacting like it is, it's likely that the situations that you're overthinking about aren't life or death. So that's a really crucial thing to remember. But what else do we need to remember when we are overthinking? What else can help ease those thoughts, ease that anxiety, and ground us in the present moment? What can bring us back to the present moment instead of being off in our heads, imagining the worst situations that could possibly happen? So, with that, it's important to know that not every thought needs solving. I touched a bit on this at the beginning of the episode, but it is true. We don't need to fix these thoughts. We don't need to fix the overthinking, and we don't need to solve them. 9 times out of 10, we probably can't actually answer these thoughts. We can't predict the future. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't have any way to sort of look ahead and actually know for certain what's going to happen. So trying to anticipate that is likely just going to cause you more overwhelm. As much as your head is naturally going to that place, it is going to cause more overwhelm and more stress to try and anticipate what could happen when we don't actually know. So if it's certainty, if it's control, if it's a sense of, okay, I feel prepared, that you're looking for with the overthinking, trying to imagine all these different scenarios, overthinking about what could happen is actually not going to help with that. If anything, it may leave you feeling more out of control because now you've got 50 million different things that could happen, 50 million different things that might happen. Your head's brought up all of these terrifying situations that, if anything, that anxiety is going to feel even worse. But when these thoughts do come up, we feel like we need to solve them. We feel like we need to think about them, like we need to ruminate on them, like we need to prepare. Our mind and that feeling of anxiety that you probably get in that moment is driving you to try and solve these thoughts. When actually, what's best for you in that moment is probably to take a step back, to recognize that, yeah, these thoughts are there. Your head is saying that you need to think about these things, you need to worry about these things, but that it's actually not going to serve you to do that. One thing that's really important to know with this, because I understand that hearing this, you might be thinking, but I can't stop those thoughts. I can't stop worrying about this. So it's important to recognize what control we do have. We can't stop these random thoughts coming up. When our head goes, what if this happens suddenly out of the blue? We can't stop those thoughts. What we do have control over is all of the thoughts that follow that, all of the thoughts that we then create from that one thought. So if you're suddenly hit with an intrusive thought of, okay, what if I get fired at work on Monday? That's terrifying. That thought we have no control over. That's just popped up. We can't control that. What we do have control and power over is whether we then answer that thought, whether we engage with it, whether we go down that route of, well, what does happen if I get fired on Monday? How can I stop that happening? How can I prevent that from happening? We have control over the thoughts that we create from that initial thought. That might sound really, really confusing. So if it does, what I kind of recommend doing is see if you can actually notice the thoughts that you create from that initial thought. It's really hard to imagine it now, but see if you can do that. See if you can notice those intrusive thoughts that come up and identify the thoughts that you create following that. So try doing that. See if you can notice that. See if it's something that you can identify. But the key thing here is just really recognizing the difference between the thoughts that pop up and the thoughts that we create. Not every thought is urgent. It might feel like it is, but it's not. Not every thought needs your attention. You can take a step back. You don't have to follow these thoughts. You don't have to engage with them. You don't have to solve their questions, and you don't have to provide the answers. You are capable of sitting with that feeling of not knowing. You are capable of feeling uncertain. You are capable of feeling a little bit out of control, and you can survive that. You can tolerate that feeling. Another thing that you can try when you notice that overthinking is kicking in is trying to see if you can ground yourself in the present moment. And what I mean by that is when we're overthinking, when we've got a lot of these chaotic thoughts going around our head, we're off. We're in a completely different headspace. We're probably not actually in reality. You might not know what's happening right in front of you. If someone's speaking to you, you might be completely tapped out, completely elsewhere, in a different place. You're in your head. You're not in the present moment. And these thoughts, they pull us away from the present moment. So it can be really helpful to get back to that present moment. And what can help with that is something that grounds you. something that really draws your focus back to the present. An example of this, because this is unique, this is something that is different for everyone. It's not as cut and dry as me saying, do this and that'll be grounding. I wish it was, but it's about finding what works for you. So, personally, for me, when I notice that I'm overthinking, I have to do something really practical, something really sort of tactile. So I tend to get really cozy, wrap myself in a blanket, because that sort of brings me into the present moment because I can feel that blanket. And then I grab a book because even though technically I'm in the headspace of that story, I'm not necessarily like in the present moment sat with those thoughts, it's engaging enough for me that I can have a little bit of a distraction, but I'm not following those thoughts. But another way that I do this is going for a walk, being in nature, being surrounded by nature. I personally find that really helpful. I've heard other people find gardening helpful. Other people find cleaning really helpful because it's quite like a physical thing that you have to put your focus into. That can be quite a good way to sort of ground yourself in the present moment. Going to the gym, exercise because you're having to focus on what you're doing as opposed to where your head is going. Other people ground themselves through journaling because you're focusing on that writing, that current thing that you're doing. Yes, you're probably getting a little bit of like the thoughts out of your head. So you will technically be thinking and sort of in your head at the same time, but the actual act of writing can be quite grounding. So there's a lot of different things that you can do here, and there'll be way more than what I've just said. It's basically anything that draws your focus back to the present moment. And a lot of the time, these are everyday tasks: cleaning, gardening, washing up, making a cup of tea, reading. There is a lot of power in the little things that we do. So, coming up to the end of this episode, a few things that are really important to remember. You are not your thoughts, you are the observer of them. It is okay to take that step back, to observe these thoughts, to not follow them, to notice where they're going, but not feel like you have to answer their questions, not feeling like you have to fix them or solve them. And if your thoughts feel heavy, that is okay. It's likely that the things you're overthinking about mean something to you. There's something that you care about, something that's important, which is where that urgency comes from, where that need to solve them, that need to answer these thoughts and provide solutions to feel a little bit more certain. It's likely because it's something that is important to you, something that you value, something that has maybe a lot of risk to it, a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety around it. And with that, we don't want to force those thoughts away. We want to simply observe them, let them be there, but not feel like we have to solve them. This practice is about taking away the power that those thoughts have over you. And it's not a one and done thing. It's not something that you'll do once and suddenly the overthinking will stop. It's a little bit of a life practice. It's something that we have to keep doing, keep practicing, and eventually we just sort of do these things on autopilot. We notice these thoughts, we notice that we're overthinking, and we are able to pull ourselves back from that. We're able to take that step back and just observe the thoughts. So it does take practice, it does take a bit of patience, but I know you can do it. I believe you can do it. Give it a go and see how you get on. I hope you found this episode helpful. You can come back whenever you want to if you need that reminder of where the overthinking comes from and that it is okay to take that step back and find those things that ground you in the present moment. So, as we come to the end of this episode, I want to say thank you for listening. It's been great having you here. And one thing that I kind of want to leave you with at the end of this episode: what's one thing that you can do to take care of yourself today? What's one thing that if you're overthinking at the moment, if your head's going here, there, and everywhere, that you can show yourself kindness? That's maybe something to have a little bit of a think about. Reflect on that, see if anything comes to mind for you. But thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Therapy with Jess Eden, and you can keep up with new episodes. I post pretty much every single day about anxiety, OCD, and mental health, and do a little story check in so that you can sort of reflect on how you're feeling in a safe space. So I will see you over there. I can't wait to have you there with us. So thank you for listening, and I will see you next Monday. Bye.